Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to head over to the US once again, specifically to Chicago in Illinois, and this is yet another of the beers that I brought back with me from my recent trip over there. And to be honest, out of all the beers that I brought back, this is probably the one that I was most excited about because I love trying my native Scotch ale beer style from different places in the world. So for this review we are going to go to Oak Park, which is a little bit out to the west of the main city of Chicago, and we're having a taste of my first beer from Cahoots Brewing. So there's the front side of the beer. This beer's name is MacBeth, and it is a barrel-aged Scotch ale coming in at 10.7% ABV. This one is aged for 19 months in Kentucky bourbon casks from what I understand, so I'm really looking forward to seeing how this beer turns out. Like I said, I love reviewing Scotch ales from different parts of the world. Probably the most unusual places that I've had these beers from so far would probably be Hong Kong. I had one in the summer from Hong Kong, Heroes Beer Company. I've had one from Iceland as well. I've also had one from Brazil, from Cervejaria Bodebrown in Brazil, and that's probably one of the best ones I've ever tried actually. I think I've had one or two of them from Japan too, so it's really cool for me to see the Scotch ale style kind of getting around the world, and this is the first one that I'm trying from the Chicago area. And as we know, Chicago is a very, very good beer city these days. I think it's got the highest concentration of breweries per capita in the US now, so yeah, definitely a place you want to go if you are at all interested in craft beer. So really looking forward to this one, as I've said, and as always I hope you guys enjoy my take on this one. Massive shout out in this video as well to Jesse Holden, who took me around Chicago and showed me lots of different places. It was very nice of him to do that, and this is the one that I bought from his local beer shop, the Iron and Glass, which is in Romeoville, and that's somewhere that you definitely want to check out as well. So anyway, as is usual with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that hopefully I can do in the future from Cahoots Brewing. Very first time I'm trying one of their beers, of course. There's all the usual social media. If you want to see more beer reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the American beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely, hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Cahoots Brewing then, on to my brewery notes. So Cahoots Brewing, as I mentioned to you earlier, are based in the Oak Park area of Chicago, which is a little bit out to the west of the main city, and the company was founded back in 2013 by Dustin Atkinson, who comes from a background in programming and sales, and I believe he actually still works in the business field as well as running the brewery. He works for a consultancy company, I think. But Dustin had apparently brewed with his dad since he was about 6 years old, and he'd taken part in this for for a number of years. His homebrewing hobby stayed with him for a good number of years. But part of this company's philosophy is collaboration. They wanted to work with different home brewers and things like this, and hence why they chose the name Cahoots. And in the early days they were actually judging homebrewing competitions, and it was at the first one that they ever judged that Ryan Merritt presented his lambic beer, and this went down extremely well, and this actually led to him becoming the head brewer at Cahoots. So apparently all of the designs and logos and things like this, the tap handles and all of this, have been voted for by fans of the brewery on social media. But initially these guys were brewing their beers at other breweries such as 1090 and Church Street, and in their first production year they had a very modest output of just 125 barrels. But later on they secured their own facility in Oak Park, which has a 7,000 square foot space. I'm not sure what that is in metric or real people measurements, as I like to call them. Square feet to me is alien. But they installed a 20 barrel system, and they now have plans to add a 2-story tap room as well. I believe they're still working on that at the moment, and they're currently going through an expansion plan to increase their production to 10,000 barrels of beer per year. But this brewery is a very interesting one because it's focused on barrel aged and sour beers, because Ryan is a sour beer head basically. He was a home brewer for a number of years as well. His wife bought him a brewing kit, and that's how he got into it. But the flagship beer of this brewery is actually an imperial stout called No S'more, and it's meant to be very, very good, that one. So hopefully that's one I can get a hold of in the future and review for you at some point. But as of August 2019 they've produced 17 different types of beer, and that's one of the reasons why I said this brewery is very interesting, because their production I believe started back in 2014, in early 2014, or the first beer was brewers released them rather, and in 5 years to only release 17 different beers, that's a lot less than a number of other breweries, because most breweries of course will they'll find a good base for a New England IPA, for example, and play around with the hops and everything like that. This brewery seemed to be playing the long game, which is definitely kind of unusual, actually. And I love breweries like this, of course. Here in Sweden, I live very close to Brekeriet, who started off as a sour beer brewery, and I love that philosophy that they have. But they are, in fairness, quite a prolific brewery as well. But regardless, it's very cool to come across a brewery like this, which has such a different approach to its brewing, and it's cool to see that my native Scotch ale style is kind of spreading throughout the world a little bit. So awesome. As I say, my first ever Scotch ale that I've tried from the Chicago area outside of Robert the Bruce, but that's not that is a lower alcohol Scotch ale. This is the first high alcohol Scotch ale that I've tried. I should probably say that, actually. But a very interesting brewery, this one, a completely different approach, and it's cool to find things like this in the craft beer world. But yeah, that's all you really need to know about Cahoots Brewing for the moment. If you want to learn more, of course, you can check out the brewery website in the description below, and of course you can follow them on Facebook and Untappd and Instagram and things like that, and that'll keep you up to date with all the latest goings on. Untappd is good for seeing the list of all the different beers that they do, and like I say, most of them are barrel aged beers and sours. So yeah, interesting one this. So yeah, let's get on to the actual tasting of this beer itself then. So like I mentioned to you at the start of the video, this one is a 10.7% Scotch ale. It's barrel aged for 19 months in Woodford Reserve barrels, which is Woodford Reserve, of course, is a brand of Kentucky bourbon. Now, a few points that I'd like to make about this style, of course. This whole term, Scotch ale and wee heavy, this is something that the Americans coined when they actually took our native beers, if you like, over to America. In Scotland, these beer styles were known as shillings. So you had the 40 shilling, 50, 60, 70, 80 and 90 shilling. And basically, as you went up this scale, it meant there was more malt content, there was more alcohol, and therefore there was more tax. Shilling was how we measured our money in that time. But the term wee heavy and Scotch ale is something that the Americans brought in. In my experience, when it comes to comparing the wee heavies and the Scotch ales, usually a wee heavy is around it's probably quite akin to an 80 or 90 shilling. It's somewhere in the middle of that in terms of its flavour profile. The American versions of these beer styles always lean a little bit more towards the kind of brown sugar and sweet side of things, and they've got more kind of red fruity character as well. Whereas the original Scottish versions of these style, they do have that red fruit. They come across as being perhaps a little touch more kind of phenolic and medicinal, and they're a little bit more roasty in their character. So the American ones are just that little bit sweeter in my mind. But I love both. And like I say, it's always cool to try these different styles from all over. The Robert the Bruce that I had from Brain's Not Working, from Three Floyds rather, over in Munster. This one, that one for me is somewhere down in the region of a sort of 60 shilling. So this is the first 90 shilling type Scotch ale that I'm trying from the Chicago area. I do apologise for telling you that lie at the start of the video, but this is what makes this beer so interesting to me. But it says on the side here, MacBeth Barrel Aged Scotch Ale, 38 IBUs, 10.7% alcohol by volume. This barrel aged Scotch ale is as epic as its namesake, the Cursed King of Scotland. Brewing this beer was dramatic, challenging, and maybe even witching at times. The malty dark and rich flavour is well worth the effort. We think old Bill Shakespeare himself would approve. So yeah, obviously, as we say, this beer is named after Macbeth from the Shakespeare play, and that is one that I have never read because I wasn't a great fan of Shakespeare. I just did not enjoy it at all. Didn't like English very much at school. It was chemistry, physics and maths that I was always into. I did like my history as well, which is why you guys get a lot of kind of research in these beers. But there you can see the brewery symbol for this one, and there is the back of the bottle. I actually wasn't sure which way around I should put this bottle on the video, but I went for this because it seemed on the website that was how they presented their beers. There you can see the bottle cap of this one, and this one, the one other thing that I would pick up on this beer, it says that it's 1 American pint, but I actually think that it's a hell of a lot bigger than that, to be honest with you. I actually think this one is maybe nearer 600 millilitres. For example, if I take this can and I'm comparing the two, this is a European tall boy, this is 440 millilitres, okay? this is one of the ones that I picked up from Half Acre in the States. So I know that this is 1 US pint and this is 473 millilitres. Okay, if you put these next to each other, I'm pretty sure this bottle is both wider, its circumference is wider, and it's actually taller. So I suspect that maybe that print that's on the bottle is wrong. And if anyone from the brewery is watching, or from the Chicago area is watching this as well, do let me know if you know about that, because I think there's more beer in this, or either that or they've printed the wrong thing. I'm not too familiar with the fluid ounce system. It does say that it's 6 fluid ounces, so I actually would have thought that these 355 milliliter bottles that you get that are comparable to our 330s are 12 fluid ounces, so I'm really not sure, but I think there's more beer in this than 1 US pint. So yeah, just be aware of that actually, but I'm not complaining, I'm Scottish. If there's more beer in it and it's Scotch ale, who cares? But that is a minor thing. Without further ado then, let's get this beer out and we will get on with the tasting. And I hope you guys over in America like my old Navy shirt. So yeah, a Scottish person reviewing a Scotch beer with an American flag on his chest. There you go. That's how we do diversity these days. But as you could see, nice little bit of smoky opening there as we bring this beer out and into the glass. And let's just get it up to about here. Look at that, you can see that this beer does have a good little bit of haze to it as we bring it out. And I mean, if I'm looking at this just now, I've poured around, if I pour that is 300 millilitres, and then there's at least another 300 millilitres in that bottle. I think they've put the wrong volume on this. That's definitely more than that is definitely more than 1 US pint. There's not much doubt in my mind about that. I think this one is actually a bomber rather than 1 US pint. I didn't notice that until I was actually getting ready for the review, so maybe that's something they need to look at, but you know, more beer, who cares. But yeah, as you can see with this one, it had a very, very thin foamy layer on the top, and I have found that when you have barrel-aged beers, quite often there's not too much in the way of head retention, but you could see that it was a sort of very light beige kind of fawn colour there, and it was quite bumpy, to be honest, so that's why it's just faded away. If I hold this beer up to the light, it is, to be honest with you, a very dark sort of mahogany colour. It's not really chestnutty. Quite often Scotch ales are a little bit more of a kind of bright colour than this, almost bright and slightly copper. This one is definitely a little bit more darker and kind of Coca-Cola coloured compared to some of the other ones that I've had. But you know, in terms of its actual colour, its EBC or whatever you want to say, it's definitely within the realm of possibilities. If I put my fingers behind the glass, there you can see there is the level of haziness to this one. This beer, in fairness, does have a good level of haziness to it. And the other thing about this one being barrel aged, of course, as well, is that the body will thin out a little bit. That's something that happens quite naturally in the barrel aging process. But 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass there, and you can see a few little ones just heading up towards the bottom of where that head would be in this one. So yeah, no head on this one. It's definitely within the realms of possibility for a Scotch ale. So let's take a closer look at the aroma then and just see how we get on with this beer. Oh, I'll tell you something, straight away, this beer, you can smell the booze off of this one. You really can. That smells really nice actually. I like that. One of the other things I should say as well, when it comes to barrel aging beers, be it, you know, an imperial stout or a Scotch ale or whatever, and with whiskey generally, I've always found that American bourbon is a little bit sweeter and more leaning towards that brown sugar side of the spectrum compared to the Scotch whiskies. I've always found the Scotch whiskies aren't quite as sweet as the the American things. But I think I would say that generally, in my experience, when it comes to American food, Americans do have a very sweet tooth. Pretty much any beer style that you get that makes its way over to America will come back a hell of a lot sweeter. I think that's a general rule when it comes to American craft beer. Not that that's a bad thing, of course, but yeah. So straight away with this one, you're going to notice those lovely brown sugary notes to this. The brown sugar that's coming out of this beer, it's very sort of treacle-like, or molasses as the Americans would say. It's got that really very highly syrupized, if that's a word, that, you know, the very, very syrupy brown sugary qualities coming out of it. That's straight away, and it's very roasty and toasty at the same time, so that's really interesting. You really can smell that boozy quality in this one. So those brown sugars, that's where a lot of the booziness to this beer is lying. You can definitely smell a little bit of the woody quality coming out of this one. It's not really a sweet wood actually, it really comes across as being more dark, and quite often when you have American bourbon barrels, the oak definitely gives you a little bit more of that kind of vanilla sweetness, but I don't get too much in the way of vanilla out of this beer. You do get those woody notes in there, but it's definitely nowhere near as vanilla-like as you might expect it in some cases. Yeah. So yeah, highly sort of syrupy brown sugars in this one. Very roasty and toasty. Maybe a little touch of a nuttiness to this one, but that's quite subtle, I would say. Woody and nutty. There's no like black malt or smokiness or anything to this one. Very much leaning towards that brown sugar end of the spectrum. In terms of hoppy character, you're not really getting much out of this, but I mean, when you barrel age a beer for 19 months, pretty much all of the hop quality, the hop, not the quality, the hop aromas and things like that, they are going to drop straight out of the beer. There is a little touch of earthiness to it, and perhaps a little bit of grassiness kind of lingering there, but you're not really picking up much in the way of hop character from the aroma of this beer. In terms of fruitiness though, there's quite a little bit going on. I mean, for me, it's definitely got that nice, sharp, almost medicinal, cough syrupy, red fruit kind of phenol thing going on. So there's a little bit of a sharp raisiny note in there. There's definitely some kind of prunes, figs, don't know about dates to be honest. Prunes and figs for me, definitely. Yeah, definitely prunes and figs. Sharp red raisins. Not really any cherry or raspberry or anything like that, which is some of the ones you can get. Some Scotch ale producers in Scotland actually, such as Cromarty Brewery, they've done Scotch ales where they've added sour raspberries to them, then aged them, and that can work out quite nicely. But yeah, this beer to me, this one, what I would say in terms of aroma, this isn't the most kind of complex Scotch ale that I've come across before in terms of its aroma, but it's certainly one of the ones that has a hell of a lot of brown sugar in there. So to be honest, if I compare this between the other American, or compare this to the other American ones I've had, Robert the Bruce, or you know, the Bastards from Founders Brewing Company, this one is definitely one of the ones that comes across as being less sweet in its aroma compared to others. So you know, take a bit of time and just enjoy the aroma of this beer before you get stuck in. But we're going to have a taste of this one now. I always like spending a bit of time on the aroma with Scotch ales, and that of course is always half the experience when it comes to craft beer. So let's get stuck in. This is the barrel aged version of the MacBeth, a Scotch ale at 10.7% from Cahoots Brewing in Oak Park, just out to the west of Chicago in Illinois. Let's get stuck into this one. Sláinte, skål. Oh yeah, that really is pretty damn good, I have to say. And one thing I have to admit, going by the flavours that you're getting out of this and the barrel aged version, as I always say, you know, barrel aging beers, I think, does take the body of them down a little bit, because I mean, this isn't the thickest Scotch ale that I've come across, right enough. But in terms of flavour, it's beautiful, don't get me wrong on this, but I'd be very curious to see what the original is like. I'm kind of in two minds about whether Scotch ales should be barrel aged or not. And it adds some interesting complexities to the beer, right enough, but sometimes I think if you kind of have them pure and just age them in the bottle a little bit, I think that's kind of enough rather than barrel aging them. But this is very, very good, and I'd be very curious to try the original this. So that's two beers that I need to look out for, the original MacBeth and the No S'more. I need to look out for those the next time I'm in Chicago. But yeah, that's really good. The first thing you're going to notice about this beer, it does come across as being quite boozy, so it's very, very nice in that regard. But let's try and break the flavour down a little bit then. So, middle of your palate, you're going to feel that, you can really feel that nice sort of woody quality to this one. The oaky flavour just blankets the middle of your tongue. And this is where the barrel aging, I think, it's what changes the Scotch ale a little bit. The original Scotch ales always have this kind of bready sort of base, like a bready, slightly grainy base. This one, when you barrel age these beer styles, it loses that. So it comes across, you can pick up a little bit of a, it's almost like a, the best way to describe it would be like a brown bready pale malt. It almost comes across as like you've got a bit of that kind of mixing in with the woody base that the beer has. So the base, really, you've got that woody note just kind of infusing into your tongue, and then you've got that almost brown bready pale malt type quality just blanketing the flavour on top of that. And as the beer, as you move further into the aftertaste, the middle of your palate dries out a little bit, and you start to get the toastier elements coming out of this beer. In the very centre of your palate, that's where the brown sugars are coming out, and you've got that really highly syrupy treacle molasses type thing there. There's not really a sweet caramel to this one. Like I say, the brown sugars are very syrupy and very toasty, and the further you go into the aftertaste, the woodiness starts to push its way out a little bit more. The centre of your palate dries up, and you start to get those toastier elements of the brown sugar pushing out there as well. So it's really interesting how that goes together. I would have expected a little bit of vanilla flavour to come out of this one, to be honest, but this is a very dark, for me, compared to other Scotch ales, this is one that's at the very dark, toasty, brown, sugary end of the spectrum. There's nothing wrong with that, it's just different, but this is a very good quality beer that wouldn't hesitate to drink this again. I'm glad I'm sharing this bottle with my dad and my friend as well. So yeah, this is really bloody good actually. Big thumbs up to Cahoots Brewing for this one. I love trying these beers, and they've, when they've got different nuances and leanings and stuff like this. But definitely one of the darker, more brown, sugary Scotch ales that I've come across, and I really like the aftertaste in this one. It's definitely one of these beers that comes across as being very, very infused actually. I think I'd be curious to see with this barrel aging thing. It'd be cool to see what it would happen to it if they aged it in rum barrels. I don't think I've ever come across a Scotch ale that's been aged in rum barrels, but if you have a more kind of brown, something that's even more brown sugary than American bourbon, that would be a kind of interesting thing actually to see how that would change it. Could be an interesting experiment for them. But yeah, I'm also finding that the more I drink of this, the sweeter the brown sugars actually get, so perhaps you need to have a few sips of this and let your mouth adjust to it, and because I can feel those brown sugary notes just kind of sweetening up a little bit the more my mouth adjusts to this beer. Back corners of the palate, you can pick up a little bit of earthiness out of this beer. I'd be curious to know what hops they would use in this, because normally in Scotland we would use English hops, but I would be guessing in America they wouldn't be using that. I'm not sure what hop you could really use in a Scotch. I mean, Williamette would be an interesting one, albeit that's a bit too floral and high alpha acid maybe, but it definitely would give you the right fruity qualities because of those blackberry notes and things that it gives you. But yeah, the hoppy character in this one is quite minimal. As I said, at night with a 19-month barrel aging thing, most of your hop quality, your hop character rather, that's the word I was looking for, is going to drop away. So yeah, a little bit earthy in the back corners of the palate. As you come further forward along the tongue, that just smooths out a little bit. There's maybe a teeny little bit of a floral note on the front corners of your tongue, but then when you move round the front curve of the palate, for me there's a definite very small grassy presence to this one, which is quite nice. It does give the beer almost just a little touch of freshness on the front of the palate there. Behind the front curve of the palate then, that's where you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters push their way out of the beer. And for me, the way that these fruity esters kind of interact with the brown sugars of the beer, that's what really makes this one. This one's definitely a very big, almost cough syrupy like Scotch ale. For me, this one, the way the fruits come out is almost a little bit cakey, to be honest with you. It almost feels like you've got a bit of cake, kind of sponge cake, underneath the fruity side of the beer, because you definitely get that when the beer dries out a little bit, the centre of your palate dries out. But there's some nice sharper raisins in there in the beginning, then the beer just starts to smooth out and you start to get these figgy, pruny, I don't know, I still don't know if I want to say dates, but you get these lovely pruny, plummy qualities out of it as well. Perhaps it's raisins and plum sharpness that are giving you that at the front of the palate, and then as you move further forward along the tongue, it does become a little bit more kind of figgy, and perhaps there's a little bit of a blackcurranty, blackberry type quality to this one. Not blueberries, I don't think, but the way that all these fruity qualities come across, it's very like a kind of cough syrup in my opinion. So I really like how that aspect of the beer goes, and it definitely has this nice juiciness, and on the front of your palate too, that grassiness that's there almost just gives you a little bit of an impression of freshness off of this beer as well, which is kind of interesting. And yeah, in terms of the flavour, when you take this beer in, it comes across as very juicy on the middle of your palate and a bit boozy in the middle of the tongue, but then as you make that transition into the aftertaste, the beer dries out and the sweetness from the malt base and the barrel aging starts to push its way out in this one. Like I said, I'd be very curious to see what this beer is like with a slightly thicker body. I've always found that barrel aging thins the body out in these beers, and I do, you know, this is good as it stands, but I'm just very curious about what the original would be like, and I think if they were going to barrel age this one, a rum barrel aged one might be a kind of interesting route to go with this one. So yeah, or even if you took one of the Scotch barrels such as Lafroig or something like that, and one of the smokier whiskies and aged it in one of these, I think that would give you some really interesting complexities to this beer as well, one of the more peaty whiskies. So yeah, that would be an interesting experiment with this. As it stands though, it's a lovely, lovely beer, this one, and I'm glad that I was able to review it. As I say, I just love trying Scotch ales from different parts of the world, and this one for me definitely fits into, you know, it's probably, this one is probably even heavier than a 90 shilling that you would normally get in Scotland. This one, you know, maybe 120 shilling. I have had a Scottish brewed Scotch ale that was described as a 180 shilling and 160 shilling, sorry. And this one's definitely somewhere between a 90 and that other beer that I had. But a lovely beer, this one, and I'm glad I was able to try it. So yeah, in terms of the mouthfeel then, I would describe this beer as being, yeah, kind of, for me this is at the bottom end of full-bodied. Carbonation's very, very smooth in this. Big oily mouthfeel. I definitely don't think this one is as thick as the regular version would be. Like I say, very, very curious to see what that one would be like. But in terms of the hoppy side of this beer, you know, it says on the side it's 38 IBUs, and in fairness, to be honest, I would struggle to see that with this one. To me, this is a beer that doesn't come across as being all that bitter as well. It is kind of roasty and toasty, but not in a bitter way. So I can see these IBUs must be coming from that darkness and that toastiness that you get from the brown sugars in there. It's an interesting thing that I wouldn't have thought about before. Malt base in the middle of your palate, like I say, quite roasty, but at the same time very kind of syrupy and also a bit sweeter as you move into the aftertaste. The fruity side of this one has a little bit of sharpness in the beginning, but then it smooths out and becomes very, very light and juicy. Not much in the way of a hoppy presence for me in this one, but does give you a little touch of freshness on the front of your palate. But overall, a really, really nice beer, this one. Definitely an interesting one to review, and I hope you guys have enjoyed my take on it. This has been a little bit of a longer review than normal, but you know, this is quite a complex beer, so we need to do things like that for this. But yeah, let's leave it at that then. This one is the barrel-aged edition of the MacBeth, a barrel-aged Scotch ale coming in at 10.7%, and it's pretty damn good, I have to say. So I definitely want to try more from Cahoots Brewing. But like I say, this is probably my last one that you'll see in a little while from the Chicago area. So I hope you've enjoyed this little mini series that I've done for you, and this was definitely a kind of cool way to sign off on this. So yeah, let's leave it at that. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Cahoots Brewing as well, and I do hope that I can get back and review the original version of the MacBeth and the No S'more Imperial Stout. That would definitely be an awesome thing to do. But thank you again for watching, and I will catch you guys later. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Check out my social media, and I'll catch you guys later. The Barrel Aged MacBeth from Cahoots Brewing in Oak Park, Illinois, just to the west of Chicago. Slàinte, skål, cheers.